Since her first short film, Alone, it has been clear that Garrett Bradley is a filmmaker of distinct vision and talent. Her Sundance Award-winning film, Time, not only confirms that promise, but vastly exceeds it. In Time, Garrett uses all of the tools in the filmmaker's arsenal to build a heart-rending story of love, commitment, family, and deep injustice. Through the story of Fox Rich, her husband Rob, and their family, what we experience in watching Time is not a conventional documentary portrait. It's a work of art. And as all great works of art do, it transcends itself. It opens up layers of the human experience, the joy, pain, longing that we rarely experience on such a profound level. Time is a film of deep importance. It speaks to us now. It will speak to us 50 years from now. It is IDA's deep honor to present the Emerging Filmmaker Award to Garrett Bradley. Let's watch the trailer for the film. Then please stay for a conversation with Garrett and award-winning filmmaker Dawn Porter.
Judge's office.
My name is Sybil Richardson, and my family is awaiting on a ruling regarding my husband's matter. I was just wondering if you might have any information on like an update on it.
No, we don't have anything. You have to just look to us on Monday.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay, all
Have a
right.
good weekend. Bye-bye. This is Sybil Richardson again.
Mm-hmm.
Where you at?
No, we don't have anything.
All righty. Thank you so much. My twins will be 18 next month. They have absolutely no idea what it means to have a father in their house, what fathers even do.
Hello.
Did you get any word from over at the big houses today?
Anything yet?
Nothing yet?
No.
Okay. You got a chance to call today?
I have not.
No? Okay. Man, these people have no respect for other human beings' lives. No matter how sane or how understanding you try to be, it just will make you lose your absolute mind. You know how hard I'm gonna be smiling when you come home? Success is the best revenge. Success is the best revenge. You're gonna show them that they can't treat human life this way. Success is the best revenge. Just hang in there, because when you get them home, they gonna pay, they gonna pay, they gonna pay. I knew that if it was gonna be totally up to me.
So thinking about Time, like about your film, so you have this, it's an OpDoc. How does it come to become a feature? Like, what was that process?
I had made, I made Alone, which was 13 minutes with OpDocs. And in the process of making that film, you know, I had initially kind of conceived of that film as being a series of conversations between Lon, who's sort of the central woman of that film, and other women who were also in incarcerated families, because sort of the irony that she and I had talked about a lot was how isolated she felt. And yet it was to a certain extent a majority experience in America. You know, because of the stigma of incarceration, not feeling like she could go to family members or even people at work, or you know, not being able to explain her experience to her friends even. And so I was thinking about making a film that could sort of be an exchange for Lon and those other women, but also then anyone who watched the film could glean a sort of sense of support and get an exchange of information. And so I took a slightly different direction at the end of the day with the film, but a sliver of it still existed, which was a conversation between Lon and Fox. Mm-hmm. And I met Fox because I contacted an organization called FLIC, Friends and Families of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. It was a simple Google search. And Gina Womack, who's the director of that organization, picked up the phone. I was at the grocery store, I'll never forget. And I was trying to explain to her what I was doing. And she was like, Lon and Fox need to speak to each other. And so they're briefly in conversation at the end of Alone. And when that film was finished, I was thinking to myself, like, nothing I've ever made has come out of me sitting at a desk and saying, what am I going to make next? Everything that I've made has come from like my real involvement in the world and my relationships with people, which I think goes back to making that distinction between your career and your craft, and seeing and witnessing something firsthand and saying, let's do something with this, right? And so time came out of the process of making Alone, of saying, how can I continue to extend this understanding of incarceration from a woman's perspective, from a family's perspective? And I was thinking, the way I was even talking about it at the time was making it as a sister film, and saying, Fox is, Robert's been incarcerated for 18 years at that point. And I was so adamant, Dawn, about it being another short film. And that was just my stubbornness of like, why does everyone care about feature-length films? Like, why does it have to be a feature for it to be important? Like, it's going to stay a short film,
Yeah, why didn't you lean into, when people, like, usually when people say it's a feature, people are like, okay, like, you gonna pay for it? Then it's a feature. But like, why didn't you leap at the, feature? Why were you thinking about, and by the way, I do think of them as sister films, like very, very strongly. They just, I feel like, time kind of like is this flower that like erupts out of Alone, like when we have the time to sink into it. So even more, I did sink into Alone, just beautifully, but I definitely think of them as sister films. So.
I love the idea of that, of it being a bloom. I mean, I think my resistance was on one hand some weird refusal of what I guess I felt like the industry wanted. Like, I resented this idea of a value system being different from something that is short to something that is long, and frankly just being stubborn, of like, why is that? Why do we care more? And why should my value system be connected to this idea of a market, and and my process be connected to, I don't want to feed into that value system. But then the more I thought about it, and frankly, when we were done filming, and when I thought I was done filming, and Fox handed me 100 hours of her personal archive that I didn't know existed, I realized actually I was also just resisting it because I was afraid. And I was afraid I didn't know how to make a feature. And I felt like I had reached sort of a glass ceiling. And yeah, I was really scared. I'd never made a feature-length documentary before.
I think, it's, at least in documentary circles, it's kind of legendary that you were almost done. And I and then you get this 100 hours of footage from Fox. But what's really interesting now, hearing you talk about, the fight to keep the form that you want, and the struggle about the form that this, would take, is what was that form going to be?
Well, the form, I mean, I knew that I wanted to make the same kind of choices that I had made with Alone. I knew it was going to be in black and white. I knew that I was going to be working with the same lenses. And that was, again, a way of sort of keeping them always connected to one another as sisters, And there are real reasons why I'm working with zooms. I mean, I feel like a zoom lens for me is something that offers both specificity and context within the same frame. It allows, it's something that for me feels like a viewer can, it really mimics the way our brains start to concentrate on something, focus on something.
Yeah.
and looking up at people is always something that's really important to me. So there were certain formal choices that I was actually just building on from previous work, you know. I think where the real challenge came in was in trying to figure out how to incorporate the archive within that. And for me, that went back for not only me, but also Gabe Rhodes, who cut the film. And it was my first time working with an editor and trying to
wait, so you got that
figure out.
You're like how close were you really to being done? Because there's
it's really funny because I think that there were, at that point, before the archive was sort of even a part of the process, I was I felt in my gut, in my bones, I still had sort of these conversations from Q&As with Alone, where I'd be, you know, I'd have people in the audience saying, well, but what did he do? And why didn't you get into the specifics of what he did? And in my brain, I was like, gosh, is that something I need to do, right? And I had to say to myself, you know what is my truth as a filmmaker? My truth is that I'm interested in human stories and the human experience behind the issues, right? I feel like in the same way, Dawn, with your work, it's, you know, especially these two films that are out right now with John Lewis and Pete, like those are about the human beings that are part of these bigger issues, you know? And for me, that's what resonates. And so how am I going to translate that as a director? And the expectation for me to get into the legal system, to get into explaining racism, which is essentially what that would be, it's not something I feel a responsibility to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, I hope that those questions can become a reflection of why people need certain answers, you know, and that can be actually something to be meditated on. So those were questions going into the editorial process that were certainly there. And ultimately I made the choices that I did. And the archive and the way that that was going to weave into those things was based on sort of these three pillars that were intrinsic to the family, which was love, which was unity, which was holding on to themselves, their individuality, none of which are linear, none of which are chronological. And so that allowed us to build structure and move forward, which is time.
Time is also memory. It's also perception. It's also heart feel, you know, all of those things.
Right.
A lot of filmmaking, I think, is this process of freeing yourself from expectations, like freeing yourself from this idea that your film has to do everything. You know, it has to explain racism, and it has to explain, you know, institutional poverty and, you know, choices that people are pushed into. I mean, obviously time is so that the archival is just magical, and watching her, you know, her grow externally and internally. You know, I almost felt like, it's going to sound funny, but I almost felt like she was aging in reverse. So I wonder, you know, the form that it ultimately took has really resonated with audiences. Is it the film you wanted to make? Is it the film that it should be? Because sometimes, you know, we feel differently about our work than others do. So I wonder where is this going to live for you in terms of satisfaction, in terms of growth? Like, where do you place it?
Wow. I think within the context of my own practice, it's one step further into my fascination with trying to make things that appear fixed, flexible, you know, both in terms of how we look at archive, both in terms of how we make films as documentarians. I think that the other part of it is seeing the way people are responding to the film. And I've had so many people reach out and just say, my father was also gone for X amount of years. My mother was also gone for X amount of years. And coming away from it from a place of feeling connected and in love with love. I mean, I think the film is a love story. It's not a case for innocence. It's not in any kind of way trying to justify what happened. It is 100% about love that exists between a family, you know? And I think it has succeeded for me in that sense, because it's what brought me to them to a certain extent, you know? And it's that has remained what my intention has been from the beginning, you know? So I think that we have accomplished that, and it feels good.
I want to talk about the music, because for me, like, the score to this film was, I mean, it's so, I understand it, and yet it's so incomprehensible to me that you could think that you can't make a feature. But the score to this music, to this film, just asserts itself. It's right there in such a bold and assured way. I mean, literally, I mean this really sincerely. Like, it took my breath away, because I was like, this is a confident filmmaker. This filmmaker knows what she wants to do with this score. It is like, me. It was just pitch perfect. And I would love for you to talk about your choices in working with the composer, and just like how the score came to be, what it means to you. You felt that it was really making a statement. If it was a little bit scary, I just like, how do you think about your score?
Yeah, wow, thank you. I wasn't thinking about it as making a statement in any way, and I didn't even think making it in black and white or anything about the film in my mind was about making a statement. Actually, and there's something really uninteresting about trying to go into something with the intention of trying to subvert something or challenge something. I mean, I think like I'm doing the best that I can, basically. That's what I'm trying to do, is the best that I can. What makes me feel like I am following a guide that's inside of me, that's in my heart, that's in my gut, that has led me to where I am in this current moment. And that is an accumulation of a lot of different experiments on other projects, you know? Time is a buildup of a lot of work since I was 16, of just playing around and certainly having influences, but ultimately feeling like I had to just do what was the best articulation of myself, whether people were going to accept that or not. I had all of these playlists on YouTube, these like 1970s Ethiopian music on YouTube. And really it was just the algorithm that just like popped up one of the tracks from Emahoy's album, and I fell in love with it. It just was like, it just really struck me. And then Gabe and I put it to picture, and I was like, dope, it works, great, we got it. But when I started to learn about who Emahoy was, that for me was what really made it cosmic and unavoidable. Like, we had to do this because she's 96 years old. She's an Ethiopian nun. She's still alive. She's a prodigy, musical prodigy, and was a prisoner of war, was classically trained in Western music, and then decided instead of becoming famous, she would go back to Ethiopia, essentially created her own genre of music. And that this music is from one album. She's only recorded one album in 1963 of all years, which was used to raise money for an orphanage. So I loved the idea. She's a fighter. She's everything. And I mean, bringing her and Fox together in time and space to me felt like cosmic. And like, how could I not, you know?
That's a great story. Heard you talk about you are very clearly very taken, very concerned about our, carceral state, about, kind of criminal justice issues now, which I get that. Do you want to be, and I ask that very intentionally, because sometimes we make films about this and people say like, you're an activist. And I'm like, I'm not an activist. I'm a filmmaker. And I say that because I don't want to take from the activists who I feel like are slogging through years, decades, centuries with singular purpose. So I wonder for you, like, once you make such powerful movies in this space, how are you feeling about your place in activism, your place in working within criminal justice, work? Like, where's that sitting for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, what has always, I think, motivated me with everything that I've made is this idea of thinking about a film as the gray area, as the space where two things that seem to be opposites, or that are not in conversation with one another, or that seem, even to be in opposition, can be in conversation with each other. And for me, that's justice. And I think that every single one of my films is attempting to do that. I think even with America, which is a silent 30-minute film that's looking at the history of cinema and Black cinema, the idea of, sort of making lost history better known in the present moment as a way of allowing us as Black creators in America to have a reference point, that's a form of justice. There's an entire population, 2.3 million people, that have systematically and purposefully made less visible. And then there's the families that are serving time on the outside. And so as a filmmaker, I felt that I was motivated. Justice in this sense is showing what's happening, is making visible what has been intentionally made invisible. And that's my contribution to what has is not only happening in this moment, but is the DNA of the American experience if you're a Black and brown person.
Well, I hope we can do it again. It's been a great conversation. So I hope to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.